Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for September 22nd around 7 a.m. We continue to track now post-tropical storm Jose off the northeastern United States and Hurricane Maria right near the Turks and Caicos Islands. Looking at a panned-out version of the Atlantic Basin, you can clearly see Hurricane Maria right near the Turks and Caicos Islands, belting the island chain right now. We have northerly winds around 60, gusting to 100, and this system will slowly be pulling away from the Bahamas and moving north, and we'll get into the details on the tracks and the possibilities in just a minute. But while I have this map up, I just wanted to mention that this has been an extremely difficult hurricane season. For areas inside this circle, all of Florida, we have the north coast of Cuba, the eastern Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and down into the northern Leeward Islands. Has just been taking a beating. Now, this all started back a while back with Harvey hitting just north of Corpus Christi, Texas, causing tremendous damage north of the Corpus Christi area. And then we had tremendous amounts of rain flooding up here, 50 inches plus in some areas around Houston. We've had a couple of hurricanes hit between Tampico and Veracruz, luckily in some unpopulated areas. These were, low-end, Category 1 type hurricanes. But then things really started ramping up. Right after Harvey, we had Hurricane Irma, 185-mile-an-hour winds for 3 days, raked the northern Leeward Islands and the Virgin Islands. Of course, went right over Great Inagua, northern coast of Cuba, right through the Florida Keys and right up the west coast of Florida, knocking out power to the biggest power outage in Florida's history. And there's still people without power down here right now. And trees are down everywhere. There's big piles of debris everywhere in Florida here, even on the East Coast. In my location, there's just piles everywhere. Most people have power back, but there's still pockets of power outages. But look, Puerto Rico just got nailed by Hurricane Maria, and the whole island is without power. Their infrastructure is knocked out. They don't have any cell connectivity. It's going to be a long, long haul for Puerto Rico. My thoughts are out with those people right now. It's a long recovery, and this is why we talk about, being prepared for hurricanes, having a generator and having all your supplies well in advance of these things, because now you got people standing in lines. This is the most dangerous period is after the hurricane passes, and we're going to see people die over the next several days to a couple of months here running generators. We already saw that in Florida. We've had a higher death toll after the hurricane than during it because of people running generators and dying from carbon monoxide poisoning, which is a colorless, odorless gas that gets into your house and it can kill you. So keep it away from your house, keep it ventilated, and make sure you run your generator safely. Also be careful, wear gloves whenever you're handling debris and, chainsaws and things like that. This is when a lot of people get hurt, and I'm fearing for the people in Puerto Rico that not only that, but the nerves are going to be frayed, and as time goes on, people are going to start getting angry, and things are going to get a little bit out of control. So I hope they can get things back in order quicker in Puerto Rico than what the projections are, which is several months before they can even get power back to part of that island. So it's going to be a rough haul. But the good news looking at this satellite picture is that there's really nothing else threatening these same land masses right now. Once Maria gets out of the way, it looks like there's really nothing behind this immediately that is a threat to any of these land masses. Now, with that said, there's a secondary height of the hurricane season. Generally, what we see is we have systems coming off of Africa, and they may develop. The way this season's been going, it wouldn't surprise me to see another one develop out here east of the islands, which would be rather unfortunate. But what they do is sneak into the Caribbean, where pressures are lowering and will be low in October. So we may go through a little hiatus here for a couple of weeks maybe, and then things are going to ramp right back up. So don't put your shutters away just yet. We've had a whole host of systems develop in the Caribbean over the past several years. I mean, starting with Sandy and Joaquin and Matthew last year. So we have a long way to go. We're only a little bit past the height of the hurricane season, but we're going to have a secondary peak coming up here, and just beware that is a possibility. So I understand everybody's nerves are shot, but just try to rough it out. The close-up floater loop of Hurricane Maria shows that looks like the eye is closing up a little bit on this system, which is good news. That would indicate that the system is beginning to weaken a little bit. You saw the dark red colors are battering Grand Turk Island right now. Northerly winds, very strong, but it looks like the eye is going to pass to the east of there and begin to pull away. So conditions will be improving later on around noontime and into the evening hours, and then the cleanup will begin. And the Turks and Caicos have also taken a beating this year. Hurricane Irma and Maria have both directly impacted the Turks and Caicos Islands, so they have taken a beating. It's been a rough hurricane season for the eastern Bahama Island chain. But the good thing is this will be pulling away, and that'll be it for the Bahamas. And here is post-tropical now, Jose. Notice there's no dark reds around this circulation. These are just tropical storm force winds around a broad area of low pressure. And there's been some northerly winds coming in here around, 40 miles an hour, especially out here on Nantucket Island and Martha's Vineyard and Block Island out in here. There's been some gusts to 50 miles an hour and some gusts up to tropical storm force on Cape Cod. So in the Hurricane City database, we don't have these little islands in the database, but we do have Cape Cod, so it's going to be considered a brush, even though it's about 40 miles was the closest point of approach to Cape Cod. That would be considered a brush in the Hurricane City database from Tropical Storm Jose, but the system is winding. So a quick summary using the HurTrack Pro, courtesy of PC Weather Products. We can animate this system and see how the system moved. And we go into, this was the 18th. We had winds of 160 miles an hour, very small, tight wind field over the island of Dominica. Latest reports are 15 dead and tremendous amounts of damage, many roofs blown off homes, complete infrastructure failure. And it's going to be a long time for the people on the island of Dominica. It's a beautiful island, by the way, and it's just a shame to see this happen. But this is living in the tropics. These hurricanes are going to come from the East Atlantic, and they're going to come all the way across, and you might go 10 years, 12 years, 15 years without a hurricane, and then sooner or later it's going to get you. And that's what happened this year. And then, of course, the system passed through there, and in the dark morning hours, the recovery began. Guadalupe had the northern eye wall just briefly on the southern shores of Guadalupe, and then the system pulled away and went just south of the island of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and there's a closest point of approach, 19 nautical miles. And at this point, the winds were 170 miles an hour. There's reports of tremendous amounts of damage on the island of St. Croix. St. Croix, well, I'll get to that in just a minute, but we continue forward here. Here's what happened in Puerto Rico. On the 20th, in the early morning hours, it made landfall in southeastern Puerto Rico with winds of 155 miles an hour. And inside the red circle, or sustained hurricane force wind field, pretty much covers the entire island at some point. Just about the entire island was affected by hurricane force winds. And then it exited with winds around 115, Category 3. And then the rest is history, and this is where we're at right now, right near Grand Turk Island, right there. And there's our current position of Hurricane Maria. But while I have this map up, St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands up here, St. Thomas, and the British Virgin Islands, St. John, St. Martin, Antigua. And the reason I'm focusing on these four locations, all four of these locations had sustained hurricane force winds from Irma and from Maria. So all these areas were double hit by major hurricanes in one season. That is a tremendous amount of stress on these islands. Even Antigua, the news from the area as well, they didn't really get directly impacted by both of these systems, where the core came over, but nevertheless, not only did they have Maria and Irma, they were on the, of course with Maria, they were well north of the center, and with Irma, they were well south of the center. But then Jose came in something like this. So they've been impacted by, especially St. Martin, has been impacted by three major hurricanes this hurricane season, when you think about it. Jose came very close, although they only had tropical storm force winds in St. Martin. The other two, Irma and Maria, both gave St. Martin hurricane force wind gust. But St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, all four of these locations have just had a devastating hurricane season. And let's just hope that they don't get any more this year. And, of course, Grand Turk over here in the Caicos, they've also been impacted by Irma and Maria. So just a horrific hurricane season for a lot of people out here. Now, here's our forecast track from the National Hurricane Center as of the 5 a.m. advisory this morning as of September 22nd. And here we go. We put this into motion, and you can see the system, according to the National Hurricane Center, Maria is going to remain a hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, and pass evenly between Bermuda and Cape Hatteras. And then we end up with the forecast ends at 5 days. This goes out to the 27th. So this is going to be a very slow movement north for the next several days. But there's our position in 5 days, according to the National Hurricane Center, evenly 298 miles to the west of Bermuda, 270 miles to the east of Cape Hatteras, and basically splitting the uprights almost as evenly as you can get. Tracking and calculating all of the best performing models over the past 5 days gives us this map, and you can see that the consensus is generally north between Bermuda and the U.S. However, if you look at a few of these models, there's a little bend to the left. Those are the European ensemble models, which indicate that the system might hesitate and turn to the left just a little bit as it gets up near between Bermuda and the U.S. But that's just going to be a temporary jog, and then it's going to resume a north and then eventually northeast track away from the United States. That's all indications from all of the models. With the exception of the Canadian model, which has been absolutely terrible on this storm. It's been off by almost over 200 miles on average at 5 days. So the Canadian model has not performed well at all on Hurricane Maria. That's the only one that really takes it into the U.S. All the other models keep it offshore and away. Now, that's not to say you got to keep your eye on, this system, because over the next couple days, there's going to be a little bit of adjustments to the left or to the right, and we're going to watch that European model very closely. But these are all the best performers. But while I have this map up, I also want to mention that, the GFS has been taking a lot of heat this year for not performing as well as the European model. The European model is always the darling. It's always the one that's right. But on this particular hurricane, the GFS has outperformed the European model. We'll see how that pans out, at least as far as track is concerned. And we'll see how that pans out on the entire track when it's all said and done. But so far, the GFS has done a pretty good job, and it's only off by about an average of 80 miles at 5 days. And the GFS is the blue model there that is furthest off to the right. So we'll see how that plays out. It could come closer to Bermuda if the GFS is right. The European is still good, even though it's not quite as good as the GFS on this particular storm. The other models, just toss them out. They're just garbage. There's the TVCX, TVCY, HMN models done very well. But the AVN, the GFS ensembles have done pretty well on this system, and they're the best. So we'll see what happens with this. So here were the main models back on September 18th. Maria, Category 1, east of the northern Leeward Islands. You can see the European model took it just south of Puerto Rico and over the north coast of Hispaniola. We know that didn't happen. And then the aviation, which is the GFS, took it just northeast of Puerto Rico, and it's pretty close to where it is right now, or at least it's projecting to be as the best track at this point. And the UK Met actually had it going northeast of Puerto Rico as well. So none of the models really pegged the exact course, but the GFS is probably, the AVN/GFS is probably the best, closest to what actually happened here. So it is the best performer. So what do the main models indicate for the future of Maria? Well, there they are. again, the best performer, the AVNO, also known as the GFS, takes it closest to Bermuda. The official forecast is in between the European and the GFS, and then the UK Met is basically the same thing, splitting the uprights, give or take. So that's where we stand at this point. We'll see how these play out in the future, but right there's your main best performing models overall. Now, it is important to note that the tropical models, such as the HWRF and the HMON model, both split the uprights as well. In fact, they come a little closer to Bermuda than the U.S. And let's go ahead and look at that GFS projection of what's going to happen with Maria. And here you see it at the bottom of the screen. It comes into the screen and does a little bit of a juke move right near, let's go back. And you see it's moving north, and then all of a sudden it jumps a little bit to the west. And the reason for that is that we have Jose that's right in here, and it's going to move off a little, probably off to the southwest a little bit in a weakened state, which might drag the system just a little closer to the coast before it eventually turns on out. So that's what the European is showing. And again, if we put that in motion, you can see that the system is moving north and then does a little juke move and will kick on off to the northeast, more than likely. So the Hurricane Hunter aircraft is out there right now investigating Maria, and you can see here north of the Turks and Caicos Islands, some of these winds out here are around 80 miles an hour at the surface. So these are the kind of winds that are going to be coming into Grand Turk, which is located right here. And then, of course, the Caicos over in here. They're going to get some of these winds down in here around 80 miles an hour, 90 maybe, as this passes by. And again, the center is probably up in here somewhere as it moves off to the north. And the Hurricane Hunters continue to fly that. Again, these links can be found right below the tracking map on the front page of Hurricane City. So to wrap things up here on a programming note, or in a shopkeeping note with Hurricane City, I've finished editing the video for Hurricane Harvey. That's going to be uploaded soon. I'm going to start editing the Irma footage, and the database is currently being updated to include the latest on Hurricane Maria. I have not gotten to Puerto Rico yet, but all of the Northeast Leeward Islands are in that mix in the database, so check that out. And I'll continue to maybe do another video update on Maria if it looks like it's going to be a threat to land. Other than that, we'll just wait for the next one in the Atlantic Basin, and fresh off the press, the latest GFS indicates we might see another system develop down in the Caribbean and head into the Gulf of Mexico, so we'll keep an eye on that over the coming days. Well, that's it for now. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Hurricane City. I don't tweet a lot, but when I do, it's really good information, so we appreciate all the followers. And, of course, we have our Facebook page, which gets updated regularly, and the front page of hurricanecity.com, a wealth of information. I'm Jim Williams. Thank you for watching.